please make sure to change your name or designation to your institution and your name so that we know and can keep track of where you're from and who you are. For a smoother flow and a more enjoyable experience, please note the following. Please be mindful of your microphones and video cameras throughout the program. If it is not yet your turn to present, we would recommend switching off your microphones and videos. We do recommend that you use, to our presenters, the side-by-side speaker video option. So everyone who is in the chat room, please choose that option so that you can clearly see the slides as well as our presenters. If you have questions, we will entertain them after every presentation. So please use the chat function of Zoom for your questions and comments. I'll be monitoring them, and we will have 5 minutes after every presentation to entertain your questions and comments. Next slide, please. To our paper presenters, please watch your Zoom chat. When you have 2 minutes left for your presentation, I will send you a message. And once you get that message, please take note that you need to wrap up your presentation. If anyone would like to tweet, Facebook post, or Instagram post about this conference, please don't forget to use our official conference hashtag AUN EEC 2022. That's all caps, AUN EEC 2022. So again, welcome to the AUN EEC Conference 2022 this year with the theme of Ecological Education and Culture, Looking Back, Looking Forward, all via Zoom. I am Dr. Inez Ponce de Leon of the Department of Communication, an Associate Professor of the Ateneo de Manila University, and I will moderate the presentations in this session. Today, we have 5 presentations lined up from a wide variety of institutions in the Philippines representing several generations of researchers. I will introduce them right before they have to present. For our very first presentation, keeping with the theme of promoting ecological education among the youth, we have the youth themselves speaking up. It is with both pride and happiness that we showcase the work of our senior high school students here at the Ateneo de Manila University. As we promote ecological education among the youth, we keep in mind that this is not only for their work in school, but preparation for the workplace, for the demands of family, community, city, and country, and for the demands of the real world. For each of these presentations today, we hope that you will gain insight as well as give comments that will help our students, researchers, presenters, professors, faculty members, and other professionals gain a deeper understanding of the context in which this research operates. Our very first presentation, as I said, comes from our senior high school. Our senior high school student represents a team of 6, Miss Julia Kirsten Bagnol, who will talk about the online shopping sprees of the COVID-19 pandemic, plastic packaging waste, and general awareness and practices amongst Filipino e-shoppers. Ms. Bagnol, you have the floor. You have 12 minutes.
Good morning. We'll present our slides. A pleasant afternoon to you all. We are a group of researchers from the Ateneo de Manila Senior High School presenting our paper on the COVID-19 pandemic online shopping spree, awareness versus practice of Filipino e-shoppers on combating the environmental impact of plastic packaging waste. These are the things we will be talking about today. As the COVID-19 brings havoc to our day-to-day lives, forcing NCR citizens to undergo community quarantine, we see a drastic increase in online shopping in these past few years. Have you recently bought something in the 9/9 sale, or are your shopping carts filled with items ready to check out in the upcoming 10/10 sale? Whatever your answer may be, I do hope before you fill your cart and click check out, it's important for you to know what the implications of your actions are on the environment. The plastic packaging used in a lot of online shopping parcel imposes a massive threat to the environment, with the majority of these plastics ending up in the ocean, harming or killing marine life. Due to this plastic waste mismanagement, the Philippines ranked as the 5th largest contributor of plastic waste in the world. With the rise of technology coupled with the COVID-19 pandemic, the problem of plastic waste continues to worsen as we see an increase in the number of plastic waste brought by online shopping. Henceforth, ecological education is necessary, as citizens need to be aware of the effects of e-shopping waste and possible ways to mitigate these worsening problems. Through this research study, the researchers aim to determine just how aware Filipino NCR citizens of the environmental impact of online shopping plastic waste and its possible sustainable actions during the COVID-19 pandemic, and whether or not these factors affect one's likelihood to practice these sustainable actions, in which the researchers hypothesized through an alternative hypothesis that the level of awareness and actual practices of NCRE shoppers on sustainable actions regarding online shopping plastic waste are associated with one another. Lastly, this research also aims to determine the common sustainable actions NCRE shoppers would like to practice but are unable to, and their corresponding reasons for why they fail to do so, with our research aiming to evaluate the general level of awareness of Filipino NCR online shoppers and understanding its implication. We are led to the following IPO conceptual framework.
As seen in the figure, the researchers seek to know and understand the demographics of the respondents, as well as their frequency of online shopping, their waste disposal practices, and their perception of their personal awareness of the packaging waste problem and sustainable actions through an online survey. All of these data are then analyzed through descriptive, quantitative, chi-square tests, and content analysis to understand the level of awareness of Filipino NCR e-shoppers towards the aggregating problem of plastic waste brought by online shopping. Now we will be moving on to the methodology of our study. In order to gather needed data, the researchers utilized both a quantitative, descriptive, and qualitative research designed through a survey questionnaire via Google Forms. The survey was composed of 5-point Likert scale questions, checkbox questions, and one open-ended question. All respondents were provided with a consent letter before partaking in the conduct of the study. Additionally, for those under 18 years old, their parents' consent and email were collected. The Research Ethics Board's approval was also obtained before the conduct of the study. For data analysis, we used descriptive analysis on measures of central tendency, measures of frequency with chi-square tests, and qualitative content analysis with codes and categories. The researchers were able to gather a total of 110 respondents to partake in the survey. The respondents who partook in the survey were limited to those who reside within the National Capital Region and identify as an e-shopper. The majority of our respondents were female at 74.5%. As for the age of our respondents, 14 to 20 years old at 51.82% was the most common age. Additionally, the respondents' most common city of residence was Quezon City at 40%. Lastly is how frequently our respondents shop online. 45.5% shopped 1 to 2 times a month, 30% shopped 3 to 4 times a month, and 15.5% shopped 5 to 6 times a month. These were the most common responses. Through the survey, the researchers have gathered the following data. First, our Likert scale questions gathered the following results. With a median and mode of 5, most participants strongly agree that they are aware of the effects of plastic trash on the environment. Consequently, participants also strongly agree that they are aware that plastic waste is increasing due to online shopping during the pandemic, given the median and mode of 5 as well. Researchers also measured the frequency of respondents' awareness and practices that combat the issue of online shopping plastic waste. Through a chi-square test, at a standard alpha level of 0.05, the resulting p-value was less than 0.001, and the contingency coefficient was 0.807, giving enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis and support the alternative hypothesis that there is a relationship between the two variables, awareness and practice. Though looking at the frequency table, the researchers observed that there is a disproportionate relationship between the two variables, given that there is more awareness yet less practice. For the first category, for example, ordering from companies that use recyclable or eco-friendly packaging, 88 respondents show awareness, while only 55 show practice, and so on. This goes for all categories except for using online shopping plastic waste at home, where 2 show awareness, yet 6 respondents show practice. In line with this and going back to the central tendency table a while ago, in statement 3, most participants also disagree that there is enough information for individuals to be aware of sustainable actions regarding online shopping waste, given a mode of 2, with 40% of respondents answering 2 or disagree, and 3 or neutral being the median. However, in statement 4, respondents generally agree that they are willing to spend more money on eco-friendly packaging companies, with the statement having a median and mode of 4, with 48.2% of respondents answering 4. Moreover, in exploring the certain practices that respondents desire to do and certain reasons why they are not able to do so, we asked the respondents the question, If there are any sustainable actions you want to practice but are unable to, please indicate them and specify the reasons you're unable to practice these actions. If none, type NA. The following categories or ideas were seen from 28 respondents who responded to the question. For practices they want to do, we have waste management, supporting sustainability, shopping less, and spreading awareness.
Given that these are the reasons why respondents aren't able to do the practices previously mentioned, there are personal circumstances, limited or lacking resources. Another reason is the lack of government assistance. The financial aspect also came up due to higher prices. And lastly, external factors, specifically the pandemic. With these at hand, we have come to the following interpretations. It can be seen that respondents are aware of the environmental impacts of plastic trash and rising number of plastic trash found in their environment due to online shopping during the pandemic. However, this awareness is not seen in practice as reflected in the frequency tables and the chi-square test, wherein the levels of awareness and actual practices of NCRE shoppers on sustainable actions regarding online shopping plastic waste were proven to be mutually affiliated. This is also similar to the findings of Punzalan study, wherein students from a private educational institution in Dasmariñas City, Cavite, were assessed on the environmental sustainability awareness and practices. In Punzalan study, although concluded as a positive correlation, participants in the study also showed high levels of environmental awareness and showed a lower extent of environmental practice with only good on three aspects and poor on one aspect. The same idea can be seen in the respondents' thoughts on not having enough information to be aware of sustainable actions regarding this issue. It can also be observed that respondents want to mainly practice waste management and supporting sustainability, but are unable to do so, mainly because of personal circumstances and limited or lacking resources. However, despite hindrances, most respondents generally agree that they are willing to spend more resources or money on eco-friendly packaging companies. Taking these findings into account, the researchers find it important for the NCR community to further strive towards spreading awareness about this environmental issue and possible sustainable actions citizens may do to combat online shopping plastic waste pollution. At the same time, there is a need to address the hindrances that prevent citizens from doing sustainable practices in order for collective sustainable action to be done.
In relation to the endeavor of this research, we have recognized some areas of the study that still needs improvements. First, we have noticed that the study is heavily centered on respondents around ages 16 to 18 years old. Hence, the beliefs of this age group may be a factor that had an impact on our study. Consequently, the second limitation in this study is that there is no accounting for the implications of available information on the environmental impact of online shopping plastic waste to the awareness and actual practice of sustainable actions, which may also bring different data if taken into consideration. While keeping these limitations in mind, we have come to the following conclusions. It has been concluded that Filipino citizens residing in NCR are strongly aware of the implications that online shopping waste brings, as well as its possible sustainable actions. Moreover, it is further revealed that there is actually a relationship between one's awareness of sustainable actions and these being put into practice. However, there is a higher level of awareness than practice. It has also been demonstrated in the study that NCR citizens desire to practice multiple sustainable actions, such as reusing and recycling online shopping plastic waste, but fail to do so, mainly because of the lack of resources. All things considered, the researchers believe that it is necessary for the NCR community to continue raising awareness and provide alternatives and solutions in order to address the effects that e-shopping waste brings. As for the study's recommendations for ecological education, it is recommended that academic institutions give timely and relevant resources on ecological awareness and their corresponding sustainable action. This can be in the form of mandatory ecological and environmental classes, integrating these in the current curriculum of science subjects, or in the form of holding educational conferences. School organizations or clubs are also recommended to host their own form of ecological education. Hosting volunteer work or educational programs will help in promoting ecological awareness and action in their community. By having programs that promote ecological action, not only are we promoting education and awareness, but we are also encouraging action-driven solutions. Some examples include educational institutions encouraging and educating on proper segregation within the community and or campus, for future studies, we can extend this research to focus on residents outside the NCR, assess the similarities and differences of online shopping habits and sustainable practices of participants with different backgrounds, and study the effectiveness of the current environmental laws and programs. Our research presents the need to raise more awareness and to provide more solutions to the widely expanding plastic problem and environmental degradation we face today. One of the solutions we need to push for is ecological education. Ecological education should not just end with information dissemination, but it should also include putting easily accessible systems and structures to allow people to practice what they learn. To close, everything we do in our daily lives does have an effect on the present course of our environment, especially with regards to plastic waste. So, in the next Shopee or Lazada sale, we hope that this study becomes of help in providing you with information concerning the implication that online shopping plastic waste has brought to the environment. May you treat yourself generously, but always bear in mind to treat the environment twice as much. This has been Aria Ang, Trisha Mendoza, Julia Bagnol, Josh Nerong, and Ellie Cervantes from the Ateneo de Manila Senior High School. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We are now ready to answer your questions.
Thank you very much to our students from the senior high. And I really am glad that you didn't just stay within the time. It was a really meaty presentation. All right. And thank you so much for a lot of things to think about. I especially like the idea that you presented, and this is not intuitive to everybody, but I like that idea that you really acknowledge that awareness and dissemination are not the only things needed. Education is not just about sending out information, but allowing people to practice within an infrastructure that gives them the chance to do so. So very good work, and thank you. We now open the floor for questions. If you have comments, suggestions on future research, and questions for our presenters, our chat room is open. Please put your questions in the chat box rather than ask them through the microphone, as our internet connections are not as stable as we wish. So if you have any questions, you may put them on chat. We'll give everyone a few seconds to type. Just in case there are no questions, we can always reserve them for later when we have a bigger discussion at the end of the program. Okay, it doesn't seem that we have questions or suggestions, but I do applaud you. Thank you so very much to our very first set of presenters, and congratulations on completing this research. Please do hang around because we might have a discussion at the end that will tie all our presentations together. Thank you. We now have a second group, still from the senior high school, this time presented by Ms. Luvic Marie Venancio. She represents another group of 5 as they talk about something for your plantitos and plantitas, and now planty students out there, taking care of plants as communal coping mechanisms within the senior high school community here at the Ateneo. Ms. Venancio, you have 12 minutes.
Good afternoon. I will be presenting our pre-recorded presentation.
Good day, everyone. We are the Wonder of Women in STEM, grade 12 students of the Ateneo de Manila Senior High School. And today we will be presenting our research on taking care of plants as a communal coping mechanism within the Ateneo Senior High School community. This is the outline. Now I'll be giving the floor to Almira.
To start this, I want to ask all of you if you're familiar with the words plantito and plantita. I'm guessing that most of us are already familiar, especially that it became a trend during the pandemic. That is why our group mainly focused our research on how home gardening affects us. Specifically, our purpose is to determine how plants affect the mental health and social interactions of Filipinos during the COVID-19 pandemic. In relation to that, based on our observations, our hypothesis is that home gardening during the COVID-19 pandemic positively affects the mental health and social interactions of Filipinos.
For our conceptual framework, We chose to go with a socio-ecological model as it suited how our study had different factors that influenced the individual, or in this case, the yellow-green ellipse for the plant carer. This framework revolves around the dark green ellipse, or the pandemic, as it is the main societal factor of all the other ellipses. Inside the pandemic is the light olive green ellipse, or online community, as it was greatly maximized during these times. With that being said, one common interest people have built their relationship upon in this pandemic is the green ellipse or plant gardening. The pandemic has been a bridge to maximize the use of online communities, specifically online communities which revolve around gardening and the people in this community who are society's plant carers. For our research design, we chose a qualitative design, specifically the phenomenological model, because it was through this that we could observe the participants' experiences. We collected descriptive data from a focus group discussion and Discord channel, then coded and grouped this data into themes. For our participants, male and female Ateneo Senior High School students between the ages 15 and 19 took part in this study. They all took care of plants, but their levels of experience varied. Some had only been gardening for a few weeks, while others had been doing so for years. For our sampling method, a non-random convenience sampling method was used to select 15 to 20 willing participants from the ASHS community's plant nurturers. The said participants were recruited through social media. After the initial observation of the Discord channel, participants were also informed of the possibility of being chosen as one of the 9 participants for a focus group discussion. Moving on to the instruments, the instruments of this study were divided into 2 parts. First, the Discord server. A Discord server was used to communicate online via text and voice channels for 10 days. Here, they were free to chat and discuss anything plant-related. After the 10-day observation period in the Discord server, a focus group discussion with 9 randomly selected Discord participants was held over Google Meet for 30 to 45 minutes. For our analysis, a thematic analysis was used to examine the data. This data was grouped together into certain themes and afterwards were explored and examined by the researchers. With the approval of the Research Ethics Committee, the informed consent of all participants was obtained through a Google form where they were fully informed of expectations and the data collection of the research. In addition, parental consent was also requested from underage participants. For our main procedure, the collection of data began once the recruited ASHS students were in the Discord server. Upon entering, participants read the details and rules they had to follow to maintain order and ensure safety. They were aware of the overview of the research as well as possibly being chosen for a focus group discussion after an observation period of 10 days in the server. Every participant made use of the text and voice channels to talk, share ideas, send photos of their plants and other things related to gardening, and react or reply to each other's messages. After observing their engagement through Discord for 10 days, 9 participants were randomly chosen for a focus group discussion over Google Meet, wherein they were asked questions about their experience of interacting in the server.
Now, let's discuss the FGD procedure. After 10 days in the Discord server, a focus group discussion was held over Google Meet on the 8th of February 2022. This FGD lasted 30 to 45 minutes and included 9 randomly selected Discord server participants. The discussion was broken up into 3 parts. First, probe questions were asked, which focused on their gardening experiences prior to the formation of the group. Second, they were asked follow-up questions about how their experience had changed since they first joined the online group, how they liked being in the Discord server, and how being on the server helped them make new plantito or plantita friends. The third and final segment primarily focused on their desire to continue socializing with the online community. The researchers came up with the FGD questions.
So let's now move on to our data analysis. We'll talk about our data from the FGD later, but let's start with what we gathered from our Discord server. So displayed on the screen right now is a picture taken of the Discord server. I want to draw your attention to the centermost picture. Here you can see that we had different text channels for different purposes. For example, the text channel, the chat channel was primarily used to chat to make friends. The plant gallery channel was used to share photos of plants, and the memes channel was used to, well, share memes. So this was one of the main reasons that we were drawn to Discord as a platform for our research. Because while it was still an organic means of communication, you can also organize channels to introduce a bit more structure while not interfering with regular interactions. So we'll start off with a few facts. The major themes that we spotted in our data was firstly, social connections. Participants chatted, greeted each other on birthdays and holidays, joked, and made friends. Secondly, there was sharing of plant media, mainly in the form of 22 plant photos in the Plant Gallery channel and 7 plant memes in the memes channel. Lastly, encouragement. Participants frequently complimented each other and reacted positively to plant photos and plant stories. We can quantitatively summarize this data with the use of this graph, where you can see that the greatest volume of messages was found in the plant gallery and chat channels, reflecting how eager people were to share photos of their plants and talk about them. So let's look at some of the key pieces of information we picked up. Here on table 1 is an interaction in the chat Discord channel where people talked about how their plants from school or their plants as a hobby helped them. Table 1.1 now shows us how participants talked about plants exchanges and even shared information about their plants. Moving on to my favorite part of the research is the plant gallery chat. We can see that participants wanted to share photos of their plants, regardless of whether that plant was part of a full-blown garden or if that plant was just a small leaf. I also want to bring our attention to the different kinds of plants that our participants were taking care of, which were mainly foliage-type plants. And if you move on to the next slide, cactus and bonsai. This brings us back to the fact that many of our participants are urban home gardeners and thus have houseplants. So finally, I would be remiss to share with you the memes that we got in our Discord. They may just be memes, but I want to bring up how the majority of these memes were compliments or pickup lines or words of a positive nature. These memes accurately summarize the tone of our Discord server. Casual and organic, yet still of a wholesome and positive nature. Now into the data of our FGD.
The tables presented are basically the summarized version of their results. For instance, for the first FGD question, we asked the participants their experiences in home gardening before the Discord server was made. As we can see, the responses here indicate that the participants were either forced to do home gardening or were at least influenced by their relatives. Also, there was a certain participant who was more experienced in home gardening due to their family's business. Afterwards, we also asked about their experience in our Discord server, and most of them positively enjoyed their experience, although some were hesitant to communicate with the other participants. In relation to that, we asked how they enjoyed their experience in interacting. Some enjoyed interacting with others, observing others, and some also enjoyed each and everyone's company. We also asked how the Discord server helped them in planting, and all of the participants answered how this inspired them to plant more. And there's a certain participant who also shared how this Discord server helped them to be confident in sharing their plans. And for our last question, we asked if they'll continue socializing with a group like this and the things that our server can improve. Some of the participants said that they will continue to socialize with a group like this. Additionally, they also suggested that creating more engaging activities and initiatives from the members of the server will make the server more effective. The limitations of our study. Our study attempted to build a plant carer community in the ASHS community. However, this study can still be improved in the following areas. First, the Discord server should last for a longer time, since the original methodology that was supposed to last for a month turned only into 10 days due to time constraints, which led to fewer interactions within the community. Second, the researchers could have organized more activities for the participants because lack of initiative from the researchers resulted in participants being shy and relatively inactive.
Now for our conclusion, the study suggests that plants are an effective way to remain connected with others in this time of pandemic through fostering a sense of community where one can share their experiences, relate to the experiences of one another, and develop friendships rooted from being a plantito or plantita. Furthermore, the study showed that taking care of plants acted as a way for the participants to unwind, thus feeling more rested and motivated amidst the pandemic. For our future studies, owing to the limitations of our study, some changes must be made if this were to be conducted by other researchers in the future. First and foremost, the data gathering period should last a month or longer instead of the aforementioned 10 days. Holding activities is also possible and highly recommended during this longer period of time. For example, plant elections, plant sharing calls, etc., which would give the participants more chances to overcome their shyness and warm up to one another, get to know each other, interact, and gain new knowledge on their shared interests in plants. In addition, it is is suggested to conduct a study with students from other schools. The different backgrounds and environments of students can influence their experiences, knowledge, and thoughts on plants prior to entering the server and produce a more diverse pool of participants and a more heterogeneous set of data. Lastly, look further into the physical health of participants involved in the study. Our current research focuses on social interactions as well as the mental health. Future researchers may examine how taking care of plants affects physical well-being. In addition, ecological education could be better appreciated by students if it is provided in ways that are more experiential, such as the utilization of a social platform to share experiences on plant caring. It should be made sure that it is not merely the transmission of information, but also a social and physical experience that influences learners beyond the confines of a classroom or research participation. Despite the storms that come, remember to have a little fern along the way. We are the wonder of women in STEM.
Again, I am Almira and I will never leave you.
Hi, I'm Jamina Green, and I'm a fine apple.
I'm Sophia Tal, and I'm not a brick.
And I'm Duvik Venancio, a lot of fern.
That is the end of our presentation. We thank you for your time, and we are now open for questions.
Thank you so much to our senior high school students. I like how there is a really strong tone of fun and that you had fun with your presentation. And that's really rare in a conference. I really like conferences where people lighten up and really show off the research because it shows us how much they understood what they did, that they're able to have fun with it and laugh with it and smile about it. So thank you very much. I think you took the plantito puns way too seriously. Your principal will have a word with me in the next few days about what you just did. But anyway, thank you. I now am opening the floor for questions, but as we wait for the questions to come in, I want to talk to these two groups who are here. So anyone can answer this, okay? We've seen the products of senior high in these last few years. We usually don't get participants in conferences who are from senior high or from high school. But in these last few years, we've seen the products of senior high, and you guys are already engaged in research really early. And that's a great sign. It's great na baliw kayo sa research really early on. So, my question to you all is, some people picked very different topics for research in this time of a pandemic. Anyone in your group can answer this. What made you choose, in particular for the one group, what made you choose plastic waste? And what made our other group choose the plantito, plantita, and plant caring phenomenon? Anyone can answer.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So actually the idea came from me because I'm a hala mom as a mother of people. In the past, I've already made designs about I've already made designs about how we can sustainably make hydroponic systems or how we can sustainably make just basic tools to combat plant illiteracy, to combat hunger and stuff like that. And I found that plants are one of the most instrumental ways in that we can improve society, right? So I thought, okay, what if we implement my hobby and my personal passion into one of my school projects? So that's how we came up with this idea, and we found that there was actually a very thriving community of plantitos and plantitas in the ESHS. So I thought, why can't we exploit that? Why can't we capitalize on that and further research on this phenomenon? So yeah, it may seem like a very shallow phenomenon, but for me, and for a lot of people apparently, it holds a lot of depth, it holds a lot of meaning. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why we picked this topic. Yeah.
Thank you. And don't ever call it a shallow phenomenon. From the point of view of a social scientist, no phenomenon is ever shallow. It's only unexplored. But thank you. What about I hate to say this, I can readily say thanks to our plants. Paano po yung mga plastic natin? What led you to this topic?
Okay, hello. So for our group, actually it's really just reading the context of today's world and finding a relevant topic. How it came to be is that, wala lang, parang naisip, well, I first thought na everyone's talking about shopping always. Like parang palagi siyang, oh, 3-3 sale na, 4-4 sale na, 5-5 sale na, 6-6 sale na. So parang taking that into mind, I wanted to have a topic that's relevant in today's time and today's context. And because of the pandemic na, puro online shopping na lang narinig from people. And so, it was my mom actually also approached me, told me she found an article about an organization that recycles plastic waste from like yung parcels ng Shopee and Lazada. And so I told that to my group, tapos pinag-usapan namin, and we thought it's a good idea, it's a good topic to have something to talk about plastic waste, especially like with regards to online shopping. And not only is it relevant, but it's also essential and important now that like environmental degradation is really like worsening pa talaga. So that's how our topic came to be.
Awesome. Maraming salamat. Oh, thank you so much for answering my questions. I really wanted to know because we're just seeing the products of senior high in these last few years, and it's great that they're all engaged in research and the critical thinking and systematic thinking that goes with it. Thank you. I hope to see you in more conferences, and I hope you never quit in doing research. Thank you, you guys. We now have our third presenter, and again to our audience, if you are here for just the last few minutes, if you were here for just the last few minutes, we are talking about promoting ecological education among the youth. I'm Dr. Inez Ponce de Leon from the Department of Communication at the Ateneo de Manila. We've had two groups presenting, and we now have a third. If you have questions or comments, you can put them on chat. We can reserve them for the discussion at the end of the session. Next is Dr. Ronilo Jose D. Flores. I am sorry. Yes, Dr. Ronilo Jose D. Flores, who will talk about popularizing ecological concepts through an original online show named PAC, or Para sa Agrikultura at Kalikasan, for agriculture and the environment. This is Front and Center. Dr. Flores, you have 12 minutes.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of my co-authors, Drs. Maria Catalina T. De Luna, Professor Mark Lester M. Chico, Dr. Pamela A. Custodio, Professor Ryan J. Galang, Mr. Christopher Kalamlam, and Ms. Christine Grace V. Mapakpak, it is an absolute honor and pleasure to be presenting to you this afternoon our paper entitled Front and Center, Popularizing Ecological Concepts Through an Original Online Show, PAC, Para sa Agrikultura at Kalikasan, for Agriculture and the Environment. This show was conceptualized by two units of the University of the Philippines. These are the UP Professional School for Agriculture and the Environment and Radyo DZLB, ang Tinig ng Kaunlaran, which is the flagship radio station of the College of Development Communication. PAC stands for Para sa Agrikultura at Kalikasan. It is an online radio program that is streamed on social media via the Radyo DZLB Facebook and YouTube pages. Its aim is to provide information on environment and agriculture that is on point, tumpak, impactful, may impact, and useful, kapaki-pakinabang. The maiden season, the first season was aired last year from November to December and featured a total of 6 episodes. These episodes were dedicated to topics all across the fields of agriculture and the environment. The first episode was battered by national scientist Dr. Emil Q. Javier and academician of the National Academy of Science and Technology, Dr. Glenn B. Bigorio, with guests from the different colleges of the university. So episode 1, we talked about the past, the present, and the future of Philippine agriculture. Episode 2 tackled eco-health and One Health, the similarities and the differences between these two concepts that are really very relevant to the times. Episode 3, on the other hand, focus more on how we can invigorate or reinvigorate or re-energize agriculture in the Philippines. And we had two experts from the School of Environmental Science and Management, and both of our guests, Dr. Espaldon and Dr. Eslava, presented their project called Project Sarai. That Sarai, which means smarter approaches to reinvigorate agriculture as an industry. Episode 4 focused more on natural resources, specifically the forest, the future of the Philippine forest. We did have guests. Both of them were deans or are current deans of College of Forestry of the CPU and CMU rather, and UPLB, Dean Marlo Mendoza. Both of our esteemed guests discussed deeply and deeply but laymanized the concepts behind forests and natural resource conservations efforts. Episode 5 focused on agricultural entrepreneurship. We featured different industries, well, 3 industries, plus the different short courses and programs that students can take at the College of Economics and Management. And the last episode focused on permaculture, for a sustainable future. For permaculture is somewhat a younger, it's a young and fresh approach to agriculture, and we were very lucky to have two of our guests join us in this episode. Season 2 was aired earlier this year, and season 2 was a bit different in the sense that that this was a partnership between PAC and an advocacy project at the College of Forestry and Natural Resources called the WILUP project, or the Watershed Integrated Land Use Planning Advocacy Project, which is led by Dr. Rex Victor Cruz, who is also a NAS academician and former dean of the former chancellor of UP Los Baños. And he served as our guest or regular regular expert in all of the episodes of season 2. The first episode tackled watersheds. What are watersheds? How do we define watersheds? Episode 2 was on more on the management of watersheds. Episode 3, Dr. Cruz and Dr. Gorospe discussed about the Ridge to Reef framework. What is this Ridge to Reef framework, and how important this is when we talk about land use. Episode 4 focused on the WILUP Advocacy Project, the Watershed Integrated Land Use project of Dr. Cruz and his team. Episode 5 was on the comprehensive land use planning. We had Dr. Cruz and Mr. Alex Lapis from the Climate Change Commission. Episode 6 was on the application of the Ridge to Reef and the WILUP framework in the LGU level in terms of making or crafting their development plans. We were joined in by Dean Ricky Sandalo of the College of Human Ecology, who is an expert in in the development, land use development. And of course, we had a special issue for the Earth Day this year. We featured the volunteers from the Ugnayan ng Pahinungod who are involved in environmental projects, environmental volunteer projects. Season 2 was also special in the sense that it also doubled as a short course. So after each episode, the production team, the staff, would release a quiz via Google form, and those audience or those students and audience who are able to finish all of the episodes together with the evaluation or the quizzes were given certificates of completion. Season 3 is the most recently concluded season, and it featured 7 episodes that revolved around the 7 lakes of San Pablo. There is an ongoing project called the 7 Lakes Assessment and Monitoring Program for Sustainable Ecosystems, uh, also in UPLB, in the 7 lakes of San Pablo. Episode 1 was more of, a conversation on the nature, the value, the uses of the 7 lakes of San Pablo. And in this particular season, we had two resident experts, Dr. Macandog and Dr. Gay Paglier. Episode 2, we were on location. We had Dr. De Chavez, who discussed about macrobentos. These are your snails, no, and their importance in maintaining a healthy ecosystem. Episode 3 was on One Health as applied in the study of 7 lakes, especially in terms of the pollution levels of the different lakes. We had Dr. Tuchia and Dr. Paglier here, who were explaining to us in layman's terms this concept. Episode 4 was on the capacity of lakes, no? Specifically the carrying capacity of lakes. No, we were, as you can see in this picture, we were on location at Lake Yambo. Episode 5 was on endocrine disruptors. No, we aptly called or titled the episode as Gender Bender, and Dr. Michelle Paraso explained to us that because of human activities, there are certain endocrine indicators or hormones that should not have been, should not be detected in fish, but are already being detected, which can be an indication of the ill effects of some of the anthropogenic activities of humans. Episode 6 was on policy and science-based decision making by the team of Dr. Bakongkis of the College of Public Affairs and Development. And of course, episode 7 was on the quality of water, specifically the microbial quality of water. There's another team that is studying coliforms at the 7 lakes of San Pablo. So each of the different episodes here featured a different component project of the 7 Lakes research program. In terms of production, these are the 3 modes that we traversed all throughout the 3 seasons of PAC. We used initially the Zoom because of health protocols and safety considerations. And then we also, at the later parts, specifically for season 3, we were able to transition to studio and on location. As you can see in these pictures, we did have some on-location shoots. This is the team, and this is our studio here at the College of Development Communication. This is our team, Christopher and RJ, and our director, Professor Mark Lester Chico. This is the studio setup. Christine works behind the camera, and our technical supervising producer, our RJ, is always on board and on set. So these are the different topics that we tackled during the conversations. No, it ranged from forest conservation to agriculture modernization, permaculture, biodiversity, policy, watersheds, land use, etc. And we did a lot of interactions with our audience, specifically in terms of the questions that they would ask our guests, and in terms of games and greetings, and even the quiz at the end of each episode, specifically for season 2. So these are the ways forward of the project. So season 4 will be featuring caves, season 5 reefs, and year 3 will be featuring agriculture seasons. We hope to widen the reach of this program and to link with educational institutions and groups so that they can use the curated programs in the website, the YouTube and the FB pages of Radyo DZLB. Thank you very much for listening, and magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flores, on behalf of your group. That was really interesting. Just for full transparency to the rest of the participants, I was chatting with Dr. Flores in the background on Zoom, and we were talking about how it's so much fun to see production happening, especially even with the pandemic. For those of us in com, masaya ang production. This is iba yung joy niya. The research fulfills us, the production enriches us. So thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Flores. Again, we are opening the floor for questions. So please do type them in the chat. But I do have a question for Dr. Flores, and I might have missed this earlier, but what inspired you to put up this production?
Well, it was was sort of a very random discussion over tea. One day we're having tea. The UP Professional School for Agriculture and Environment is actually a unit under the graduate school. So I'm from the graduate school, but my mother unit is the biological science. I'm a biologist who is doubling as a radio show host. But it was over a cup of coffee, I think, and we had and our college secretary was Dr. Pam Custodio, who was from the College of Development
Yeah.
Communications. It just happened that the main question was how to promote the institute, the UP Professional School for Agriculture and Environment, and it just so happened that we that the universe conspired and we were on the same wavelength and said maybe we can have a show that features agriculture environment because for in the lineup of shows in Radio DZLB and um in the cable TV here, we do not have a show like that. So it's certainly a gap that we wanted to fill in. So
And I'm glad to hear that. And I mean, I just wish the senior high school students were here because this is just one of those things that really happens in science. It just happens. The inspiration comes. If you don't force it, you don't sit in a lab, you sometimes talk about it. So I'm glad to hear that. It's nice to hear it so organically produced. Do you have any plans to bring it to, and this might sound strange, but an urban area, something about urban, to bring agriculture to the urban to this gray jungle of Metro Manila.
that is something that we would want to do because we have a lot of sub teams in agriculture that actually zeroes in the integration of agriculture and caring for the environment in the urban setting. You have reconciliation ecology, you have vertical farming, you have
Yes.
yung mga plantitos and plantitas. We don't even we have not had an episode that features plantitos and plantitas and the edible gardening, like you plant your own food and stuff like that. So certainly that's in the works, and hopefully we could visit you all in Manila and maybe we can have a season there. So if you have ideas that if you want to be featured, then certainly you'll be very welcome to collaborate with you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And we've been talking about this. This would be fun for a collaboration. I do have comments and questions for you from Janina Castro on chat. She says, yes, there's a rich rooftop garden culture around Metro Manila. So, this is something nice. Of course, it is not at the scale that our farmers use to till our lands and to produce our food. But I think it does bring people closer to the idea that food is not simply, it doesn't simply pop up on your table. Talaga may pinanggagalingan yan. Thank you, Janina. Now from Sir Justin Joseph, I would like to commend, he says, the team that worked on PAC, as the topics that you covered, such as permaculture and watershed, are complex topics that are quite important in relation to ecological education. It's great that you are making these concepts accessible to people. This is great work you're doing. Is it possible, and this was my next question really today, is it possible to access these episodes? I would love to watch them. Maybe I could also ask my students to watch these as well.
This is certainly what we want to achieve, no? Doing all this legwork and all this planning to reach so many people in so many different levels. And to answer the question, yes, you can access all the episodes at the official YouTube page of Radio DZLD. So naka-curate po yon. It's already clustered in seasons and also at the Facebook page of Radio DZLD online.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Flores. And kay Sir Justin Badion, please do check it out. Is it okay, sir, if we could ask you to leave the URL in the chat room when you're ready na po?
Yeah,
All right. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Flores, for featuring pack na presentation about pack. Thank you, tumpak talaga. All right, so thank you. We hope you stay because we still have a discussion coming up at the end. After we've gone through a radio show and agriculture, let's now talk WebGrid. Let's talk a different kind of technology. And this time, we'll hear from Mr. Dexter Law, representing a group from Xavier University and Ateneo de Cagayan, as they talk about the role of the academe in building resilience. Mr. Law, you have 12 minutes.
Thank you, Doc Ines. I'll share my screen po. Is that seen? Can you see it, Doc Ines? Okay, good. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. My co-presenters are actually Doc Gina Ichon and Engineer Jeff Valiente. I think Doc Gina is also here with us. So what is grid or XU web grid? Well, first, no, grid is a word to describe method to understand very difficult problems. In engineering, it's actually placing lines so that you will locate immediately what you are looking for. Or in a computer science point of view, this is a series of computers that would try to solve a complex problem altogether. And so this actually started in 2020 when the Department of Health here in Region 10 was asking, what can we do about data that is coming in every day? And so we were happy because they approached Xavier University to work with them. Because what we see in most of the show or in the tables that we see in TV or even on Facebook is a monochrome. Basically, the number of cases or on that time, these were suspects. There were no testing at that time. So it's like this for the whole region. Then we dive deep to the data and saw that there's actually geographic flavor of this data coming in every day. You see, for example, that not just the numbers, but the location where these are happening. So there is, again, a geographic flavor that is very important to look at when we see COVID data, for example. So that's the G there, the geographic flavor of data to become information. And because this is the data has location or has coordinates, then we can place them in a more friendly platform like maps. And in this case, this is Cagayan de Oro, for example, and we can map out how many COVID cases or how many suspect cases during that time. We can even overlay and we can zoom in, actually. We can zoom in and we can even see the history in this area during what span of months or weeks. And then we can even overlay, for example, what is the original population in that area or in that place. And we see, for example, that there probably a resemblance as to how packed people are in that area as to how many COVID cases were found. So that's the beauty of having it in map form, other than just tables, and you can also immediately locate where you are. So for us, it becomes very user friendly or user effective because you know where you are located. So here, as an example, you can click on elements of the map and see the history actually here. Other than that, we can even place more interesting and useful information. And I'm sure the youth will be very innovative and very artistic and creative in placing what are really the places that are important during a pandemic. Will this be groceries and hospitals, for example? And you can even place more information if you click, for example, a particular hospital. This is, for example, the city hospital, and we can see their capacity, etc. So again, you can already make data to some kind of intelligence or a decision support tool by just overlaying this very, very simple layers of information. The next point that we want to emphasize is we want to see this phenomenon or this crisis in a risk perspective. We say that I am sure some of you are familiar with the global risk framework, where the risk or the probability of us getting COVID or getting hurt, for example, are made of three elements. There is, of course, the hazard, earthquake, flood, or in this case, COVID. And there is the exposed element we are talking about, and the vulnerability or the weaknesses of this exposed element as to the hazard we are talking about. So again, no, your problem here, for example, becomes more focused because you know what you are talking about. We can talk about risk to death, healthcare system, etc. As I've said, we have even applied this to business, to risk of businesses closing down here in Cagayan de Oro. So we applied this, and this was funded by the USAID for us to come up with the business recovery plan, no, from COVID. So again, it's problem focused. And some results, for example, in risk perspective and geospatial in platform, is we can plot, for example, the COVID cases. And in this case, this is for the education cluster. And I mean, sorry, the education sector. And this is the number of schools. You will see in the hinterlands, for example, less schools. And here, in terms of vulnerability, you also see more vulnerable those in the upland because they don't have internet connection, so they cannot continue with online learning, for example. And then we can map out the risk and even do prioritization in terms of threshold values. So immediately, the city was able to use these maps for the recovery plan. And if we say we are healing as one, no, and therefore it doesn't mean that only because the COVID cases are more in the downtown where my cursor is, but the children in the uptown will not be able to continue schooling because they don't have access to even electricity. So again, this gives us the risk perspective. And we have done this to other sectors like food sector, tourism sector, etc. No, for the recovery plan. Other than that, since this is in risk framework, we're using a risk framework, we can also overlay other hazards that are imminent or relevant to the place. For example, this is the flood footprint of Sendong. And since this is also online, so we can immediately zoom in from here, and then from here to here, we can immediately zoom in using your tablet or even your phone. And you will see your double jeopardy, my COVID na, and then there is even flood in that case. And this really happened in CDO, and I think in many parts of the country. So that's the I there. No, it's actually internet-based. Actually, the motivation for us having an internet-based or web-based platform, because Doc Gina from the School of Medicine and myself in engineering cannot work face-to-face during that time because the campus is closed. And that's why we found a method or a platform where we can still work together and make these risk maps, for example, on an online platform. So basically, it is web-based geospatial risk dashboard. It's data-driven. The problem there is focus, and the output really are solutions, hopefully, as a decision support tool. And we've trained 7 LGUs in the Philippines together with the National Resilience Council, Ateneo de Manila University, and some other Ateneos in the Philippines, and some other CSOs. We trained them to come up with their own dashboard, not only on COVID, but including relevant hazard in their places. I think that one very important point to highlight here is the LGUs now are empowered when they have their own control of what to place there. And the time needed, for example, for processing is very immediate because it's just under them. No, they can manage this immediately. One, talking about resilience very quickly, I want to jump on this topic because we said, how does this contribute to resilience? When we say resilience, according to UNDRR, it's the ability of this system or LGU, for example, where we're able to resist, absorb, etc. But more importantly, to transform timely and efficiently, these risks that we are experiencing. So you cannot, therefore, move forward to resilience if you do not know in the first place what is your risk. So that is an imperative. And the keyword here is to transform in a very timely and efficient manner. One of the outputs of the cities that we've trained, for example, is in CDO, where they're able to plot here the hazard and then the exposure basically the framework that I presented and the vulnerability, and they were able to come up with risk maps in terms of COVID here. And they can even put again threshold value for our local officials to translate this into so basically which one do we really do first or attack first. And this was even so fine, no, the granularity of the data, because they have placed this in terms of sitio. So, and it's good to really work with local government units because they actually have this data. It's just that we're telling them you can do it this way and make it as your intelligence, for example. And actually, some of our students are actually doing this, no, with the city. And then, for example, we see here high risk areas. And if we try to zoom in, for example, here you can check as to how many families basically are included in that parcel. And we are able to come up here the entire CDO. For example, there are active cases, and we can zoom in. And for example, I'd like to here, this was the this is a part here where it's placed red because it has high risk and therefore high probability that cases would occur here, would happen. And indeed, no, actual cases were really found here. And so in terms of locking down, no, we don't need to lock down the entire city, but to just zero in to this block, for example, so that not everyone also cannot move, no, without a valid reason. Last example is we've also done this for other hazards during Oring. No, this was I think in 2021 February. So we also released this even before the storm comes. Okay, minutes. So very quickly, so we track the population here, the vulnerability. Again, no, just going back to going to the end part. If we see here, this is actually what you see in the WebGrid platform that we produced. And if you zoom in, there are really houses there. And these maps were produced even like 2 days before the storm. And this is the outcome, no, when it really happened. So we can really use science, no, to have predictive decision support tools so that we can save lives and as well as properties. I'd like to end that we are doing this because in Ateneo, of course, we want to serve the community, and we are grateful that we are given this opportunity. To my students, I always say the colors here are colors and there are numbers there behind the colors, and these are the sites. But I think what is more important are the insights. Therefore, what does the red color mean? What does it invite us to do? For example, I think transformation or more developmental response, no, than just relief operation, for example. I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much po, Sir Dex. It's really great to hear from XU and Ateneo de Cagayan. I'm really glad that you have all of these projects, and it's boom talaga yung project na to. I'm so glad to see it. I also work a lot in risk communication, and I advise a lot of student in risk comm. So my research really coincides and intersects with yours. Have you been able to work with any communication or sociological or psychologically related na mga research groups aside from the work that you're doing po?
Yeah, in this project in particular, we work with Dr. Emma Porio of your sociology department. So she's always our our guide, no, in terms of the social and the approach as to governance, for example, for this particular project po, Dr. Ines.
Oh yes, yeah. Ma'am Emma was also part of my research group. We were co-PIs a few years ago. So yes, I understand that. It's really good that you have branched out to different Ateneos as well and different researches. What about do you work within a network in Southeast Asia, in the ASEAN? Are there other similar mapping efforts from which you can draw both inspiration and networking in the area, in the region? Sorry.
Not formally and not in this project, but we work now very closely with the UNESCO chair for DRR and resilience engineering. And our focus is really on resilience of school systems. So that's what we are busy working with. We have some mapping, but not applied to WebGrid yet. No, hindi pa po. on the go pa po. On the
Oh, okay. But interesting. I really like this project because it does a lot of parang eye in the sky mapping. And then there are those of us who work on the ground mapping. So this is really interesting. I'm opening up the floor for questions. So please, if anyone would like to use the chat to ask Mr. Law and his team about their research, here we are. Yes, Mr. Badyon, he would like to commend and thank WebGrid for the development of the tool. And he thinks, yes, and I think this as well, visualization tools like this make data accessible to people, and especially in relation to allowing LGUs and NGOs to respond in a smart and efficient way to all forms of hazards. It also enlivens me, Mr. Badyon, to hear that this tool has been utilized in response to various hazards such as COVID and typhoons. That's true. In times of great risk, we need to help people navigate the uncertain. And I think this tool really does help. Thank you so much. And yes, thank you for the comment, Mr. Badyon. Thank you po. Does anyone have questions or recommendations or suggestions or comments as well for Mr. Law before we ask our last presenter to the floor? We do have time later for a general discussion if anyone would like to have it. But for the moment, Mr. Law, thank you so much for presenting WebGrid. That was really interesting. Thank you. Our last presenter for today will now talk about learning from the past and uncovering the disaster memories that in the case of Typhoon Washi.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello. I did not attend
We have Miss Gretchen Abuso. Please go ahead. Yes.
You can hear me, no? Sorry, I didn't attend the technical check. So, mayong hapon sa tanan. Yeah. I will share pala, sorry. Wait, I will share this one.
Hello, I'm Miss Gretchen. You're really lagging po. But it's okay. Please go ahead.
Sige, I will turn off my cam na lang, ma'am, ha? Sorry. Wait.
Okay, so will I. Okay.
Yeah, oo. Okay ba? Okay. So, I don't know. I'll do my best. So, this paper that present is actually from a presentation from a paper that I did for my professor in UP, Professor Michael Tan. So here I talk about how we can use memory studies as a lens to examine how natural disasters are remembered and why we should remember the tragedies of the past. You can let me know later if you cannot understand anymore because of my internet, huh? Okay, so my past research experience really deals with how Filipinos remember the first Marcos regime, but completely unrelated to the present Marcos regime right now. Lately, I shifted my focus on how societies remember natural disasters, first starting with my city in its experience of Typhoon Sendong, which happened 10 years ago. I think this was mentioned a while ago by VP Dexter Lon, no? Okay. So, just for context, among other reports, there have been several reports actually warning of future super typhoons happening. No, so the IPCC report, which was released last year, also warned that global warming, heavy precipitation, and associated flooding are projected to intensify and will be more frequent in most regions in Africa and Asia. This means that natural catastrophes brought by storms like Sendong, Yolanda, and Odette, which happened last December, are not likely to end during our lifetime. So these natural disasters are not just one-time event. Since super typhoons will surely come our way in the future, it is worthwhile to ask whether people have learned from their experiences of past natural disasters. So in this presentation, I present one way of exploring this question by looking into the material objects that represent past natural disasters in public spaces and to see whether these memory objects can be considered as viable mechanisms in building public awareness on disaster preparedness. As I mentioned a while ago, my previous research really deals with collective memories of Filipinos on the Marcos regime. As you know, when the dictator was ousted in 1986, there were numerous memorials. There are magnificent monuments like the EDSA monument and museums, which I understand one of them is in Ateneo, had been erected to commemorate and pay tribute to the victims and heroes of the Marcos regime. Yet, as you know, these physical structures were impotent in preventing the dictator's heirs from retaking Malacanang. So, I am interested to see the importance of looking into how we memorialize the past so that it actually moves forward beyond reminding people and actually becoming mechanisms in preventing past mistakes from being repeated. So this is a page from a report which discusses the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan, and it says here na Japan has an advanced disaster risk management system that has evolved over nearly 2,000 years as the country has coped with natural risks and hazards. So the statement reveals that behind Japan's disaster preparedness and response is a culture of preparedness transmitted across generations for 2,000 years. They have many mechanisms, no, but just related to this presentation, this is an example of a memory object related to their past disasters. So this is called a tsunami stone. Many of this, they have many of this in Japan, which is, some of them are 100 years old, more than 100 years old. And if you can see in this case, there's a new monument, memorial, but on the side are old ones. So usually in these markers, there's a message from a previous generation warning them about the dangers of a tsunami. And you can see in this case na they replace the old ones na because na erase na yung message from the other. So these examples show how public memorials are not just reminders of a tragedy, no, they can also serve as warnings for public awareness. This is an infographic which was released last year in December. And then it puts Sendong, Typhoon Washi local name Sendong, which happened in our city in 2011. It places Sendong among the past major typhoons that in recent history. And so you have Sendong, Yolanda, and Odette. But if you look at the maximum strength, no, nasa top siya, you would see na relatively weak Sendong, which was only 75 kilometers per hour compared to Yolanda, 225 and 115 for Odette. However, Sendong claimed 1,268 lives, no? So that's how bad it was. So this is, I think my picture a while ago si Professor Dexter Lon, no? This one I got from the internet. Okay. So the left one is a photo of our city during Sendong, and the right one is our city today. So before Sendong in 2011, there was a vibrant community located along the river which Cagayan River traverses all over our city. And during my morning commute, I would often see people bathing and washing their clothes in the river along a row of houses nearby. During the tenure of our former mayor, houses made of light materials were allowed to proliferate in these areas along the river because these were known to be his vote-rich base. When Sendong came in 2011, hundreds died in these settlements. And then in 2013, during the local elections, the former mayor lost his bid for a 5th term, and his loss was directly correlated to the impact of the typhoon in the city. And so today, more than 10 years later, because it happened in 2011, much of the evidence of the disaster is barely visible in our city, and we have changed physically and politically. So, so therefore, in this presentation, I try to document whether we still bear, does the city still bear memories of the disaster, particularly its visual evidence through these two methods. But I will only be able to present the analysis of the memorials that we have. Okay, so I will be able to present 3, hindi maputol. So 3 memorials, no? So the first memorial on the slide that you can see here is the Sendong Memorial Wall, a wall made, which is just that, a simple wall made of marble, and then the names of the victims are etched on the wall. And then there's an inscription at the bottom that says, "In memory of those who perished during the rampage of Tropical Storm Sendong in Cagayan de Oro last December 17. So in the inscription, it describes Sendong as rampage, explaining how victims died. the floodwaters brought by Sendong swept those houses along the river, wherein many of the bodies of those who died were never recovered. So for the victims whose bodies were not found, these memorials serve as a proof of life and death because many of their bodies were not recovered. No? So without a body to bury, disaster memorials becomes the substitute for personal grave where the left behind family members can commemorate the victims. And then this particular wall is located here. So this is a aerial view. So it's located that wall is located in the middle of the city, the middle of a park, beside our cathedral, and across the street is our city hall. So this means that the location of the memorial wall is prominently located in the city's center, easily accessible to the entire public, including the residents, relatives of the victims, and anyone who wants to pay respect. So contrast that one to the other memorial. So the photo on the right. So this one is called the Sendong Memorial, which is a series of columns arranged in a half moon with a fountain in the middle. So this is much bigger. So this is not just a wall. And then the names of the victims of Sendong are etched on the columns. And this one is located in a private cemetery owned by the Villar Foundation. In terms of its use and purpose for disaster remembrance, this memorial is placed in a lesser-known cemetery located in a remote part of the city and accessible only to private vehicles. This would mean that while it is much bigger, more imposing, and can accommodate more people, the memorial is more likely to be visited only by the relatives or friends of those who are buried in the cemetery. This would also mean that paying tribute to the victims in this memorial site is likely to happen only during All Souls Day or during the anniversary of Sendong. So the last memorial that I will show is this one. This is a marker dedicated to a mango tree. So this mango tree, I hope you can see, so there's a mango tree there, and then beside it there's a marker. So that one is located in an islet in the middle of Cagayan River. And then the inscription on the marker says, so I will read it out. So the tree of life, this mango saved more than 50 people, residents of Isla de Oro at the height of the unprecedented flooding caused by tropical storm Sendong last December 16, 2011. So in that inscription, it serves as an account of how people survived the rush of floodwaters during Sendong. If you look at also the height of the mango tree, you can imagine how high the floodwaters went up during the rampage of Sendong. And it says there were 50 people who clung onto that mango tree. So you can, and those are the size of those people. No? So times 50. So that is one way that victims of Sendong survived. So I'm almost done. So the three memorials featured in this paper are consistent with being memorials as they are built as permanent reminders of Sendong and the fatality that it caused to our city's population. And as we have seen, memorials serve as storytellers. No? They tell us the number of people who died based on the names etched on the memorials. And they also tell us that the floodwaters flowed in a rampage and it went as high up as a mango tree. The placement of these memorials in public places facilitates the purpose of disaster memorials to be symbols of the past that is shared by the community. However, we also see that these physical markers do not serve an educational purpose to the public and fails in helping residents to learn from the past. It might become like the martial law memorials we had, no? So, but since this is a conference for educators, so I'll provide just a few words on that. So the presence of these memorials in public spaces should be taken as a great opportunity to disseminate disaster awareness, which is something that still needs to be explored in our setting. And looking into how societies choose to memorialize natural disasters and what we can learn from them can be an interesting takeoff in teaching about disaster awareness. So actually, I'll end there. I hope I made sense. Wait, I will. Okay. So daghang salamat. Thank you for your attention. I hope I was able to share
And
something
daghang
worthwhile.
salamat. Yes, thank you.
I will
Thank
stop
you so
here.
very much. Yeah. Okay, Miss Gretchen, can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, and thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate this because I also have studied disaster memory, and this is an idea that is propagated in Japan. It is very culturally rooted. It is very deep in a culture to remember, but it's also very deep inside the culture to be willing to forget or to move on. Have you been able to link up with researchers who have talked to people about disaster memory? Or have you done your research work on people themselves, not just the monuments, but how they think about disasters po?
I know, I did my previous research really was on collective memories on the martial law, and that was what I interviewed people, no, students, what was transmitted to them. Particularly on this part, there's actually another part on this in terms of how the environment, like what do the physical, like islands, I don't know, the environment, how does it bear memories of that disaster? Not just the one that are built, no, which are memorials. So particularly for disaster memorials, I've only done this one for now, because kasi I'm from sociology. So the thing with us is that of course you interview people. This is quite new actually. I'm not even sure. I don't know. My professor said it's correct, so I hope it's correct. So like assuming that objects can tell a story. So that's something new for me actually. But to answer your question, particularly for disaster memories, I haven't done that yet. I've only just analyzed memorials. But in terms of like another part of memory studies, yeah, I did interview people. And according to them, by the way, memorials, like for example, when I asked them, like because this was about martial law, like they didn't really mention like that it had a use, like it had an impact on them. Like it was never mentioned, no? Those monuments, those museums, they never really say when you say what influenced you, what formed your knowledge about the martial law, the memorials or the museums were not actually mentioned.
Did they ever mention what formed their memories? If I might ask about your research.
Yes. Education, that's very important. Like what was taught to them by their professors, that's important. And also their families. When I look, this is martial law, okay. So there are actually conflicting stories, no? Like this is what their teacher says, this is what their family member says. Although there is in general their opinion about the martial law is really in conflict. Like we don't have a settled memory about that period, particularly because it is not taught in schools. It is taught despairingly, like depende on the teacher. But if you look at our curriculum, like if you notice, it's not discussed. So at the end of the day, they really rely on whatever information they can get. If their teacher will tell them about it, then okay, or their family members. So.
But no, thank you. Please don't apologize for sharing something outside of the current research because it does lend insight into the state of our society for different issues. And, martial law is one of them. So I'm really also curious about how people think about disasters and what memories they form. And sometimes something that is so destructive is always pushed to the back of their heads rather than let's remember so that next time we can respond. But it doesn't look like that's very much a part of our culture. I do have a comment, however, from Mr. Badion. Thank you so much. He's thanking you for the study. He wonders if there are physical markers and memorials are enough. Perhaps we can translate these memorials into the digital world and onto platforms in the digital world. There are various digital banks and archives on disasters online, and it's also possible to keep the memory through content generation platforms like YouTube, TikTok, etc. Since there are content creators whose content specifically speaks on keeping memories of disasters and events in the past.
That's a good suggestion. I don't know. I'll still see. I'm only a student. I'm doing my PhD right now, and this is one of the projects that I did. No, you are right. This is quite like disaster memories is developed in Japan. The disaster memorials is just one. No, and they have other mechanisms of forming disaster preparedness through the memories that were transmitted to them by their by their I'm not sure if I'm still there, by their ancestor. So there are, like, for example, during the what is it? What during the anniversary of a particular disaster, like, it's not only commemoration, they actually hold disaster drills during that time. No? So that's just one way. And they also have like digital museums, no. But we are still starting. I think that's a I will save your suggestion. Yeah. But I'm not sure if I can do all these things. I'll save your suggestion. Maybe in my data gathering later. These are really good take off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Sir Badion. Again, the chat room is open, and this time, because we've come to the end of our sessions, the chat room is open for questions to all the presenters who are still here. We can still have a discussion. In the meantime, thank you to Ms. Gretchen for her presentation on disaster memory and its role in ecological education. We can still open the floor for questions if there are comments, discussion questions, or suggestions from any of the people here in our Zoom room. Please go ahead. You can use the chat, and because we now have time, you can unmute your mic and you can ask questions. We'll leave you about 30 seconds to type your questions or your discussion prompts for our presenters. And we really do hope that people do stay, because after the discussion, if any, we're going to have our souvenir photo. So please do stay.
Ma'am, I'll just ask my question verbally. For the
Okay, sure.
Senior high school students a while ago, because it takes time for me to type. If they are still here, I'm really curious, like, okay lang ako. Can I be heard?
Yeah, you can be heard, but I'm sorry, I don't think they're here anymore. Even their advisor left. Sayang, because we actually do have questions for them that are reserved.
Yan lang about kasi yung Discord. Like, kasi na-mention kanina yung mga TikTok. Kaya, sorry, hindi ako familiar masyado doon. Yun nga, di ba they use the Discord as a source of data? I wanted to ask sana, what are the advantages of using that platform to gather qualitative data? But I think in a way, it's a good way to gather data from these new platforms, aside from the face-to-face interviews, no? And there are other sources of data. No? Yun lang. Thank you.
Oh, sayang, yes, because actually, yes, Sir Badion was also going to ask them about Discord and what the disadvantages and advantages are of using Discord, because they do use it widely. I don't use it myself. It's too slow for my internet, but it gets too slow for my slow internet, sorry. But they do use it a lot for gathering people. It's the new Yahoo groups, for those of you who are of a certain age and know what the Yahoo groups are like. But this is more interactive, parang Viber for the kids. And it does have a lot of affordances that they can use in order to communicate with each other. So it becomes a great way to gather data. It's like an FGD for people with good internet. So yeah, but Discord does have its disadvantages then. And then we were also waiting for the limitations on using the platform. But I hope that we can extend it to them, the question to them, because we do have what is it? Yung ating directory of their emails. If you would like, you can ask them directly. It would be a good exercise for our young researchers. But thank you. Yes, and just as Sir says, Discourse advantage is that it's the organic nature of the conversations. It is like the new Yahoo groups, but you don't type. You can talk, and you can use a wide variety of tools to express yourself. There are GIFs, emojis, iba siya. It's visual as it is textual, so it's organic. But yeah, thank you, Miss Gretchen, for bringing that up, and thank you as well to Sir Justin. I just wish they were here to answer your questions, but I guess they needed to run away for their own classes. We don't have questions or comments from the chat room or from anyone else in the room. Again, I would like to thank all our presenters, both those who have left and those who are still here. Thank you so much for being a part of this conference, specifically this room and this session here at the AUN EEC. Before we leave, we have our day one closing remarks from Dr. Maria Asunta C. Cuyageng, the Executive Director of the AUN EEC, also a professor at the Ateneo de Manila University.
Hello, everyone. We hope you had a fruitful time during this session and the conference as a whole. On behalf of the Conference Secretariat, I would like to thank you for participating in the events today. We hope that the lecture and panel discussions gave you insights on what we can learn from those who came before us, from those who understood that they were part of the natural world and that their activities impacted not only the environment, but their societies and resources. We hope that the lectures and panel discussion tomorrow will also inspire you to become engaged as citizens who will help define a more positive future. This afternoon was more focused on your interests. We hope that the session gave you ideas for your own work, as well as ideas for collaboration. Special thanks to Dr. Ines Ponce de Leon for moderating this session. And to all the participants, thank you for making time for this session. As we end this conference, we invite you to join us in the future activities of the ASEAN University Network on Ecological Education and Culture. Stay safe and well. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay.
Thank you so very much to Ma'am Achut and to everyone who has made this event possible. Before we leave, we are going to have a souvenir photo, but before that, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Vixon Visperas, who has so kindly been our tech and our guide and our overseer here in this chat room. You can give him a heart, the round of applause, a big thank you, because Sir Vixon has been so instrumental in making sure that everything ran smoothly today. So thank you so very much. I would like to thank as well the AUN EEC for giving all of us a chance to showcase our research. So if we may now have the souvenir photo, Sir Vixon.
Yes, kindly turn on.
Okay. All right, just a quick reminder, everybody, please turn on your cameras. No time to be shy now. And please do get your best smile ready.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Isa ka ba? 1, 2, 3. Ayan, thank you po.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, and yes, we will have a few reminders. If we might have them on the screen po for our participants. Thank you. This is only day one of the AUN EEC conference of 2022. Tomorrow, our plenary session will begin at 9 a.m. Please access it using today's plenary link. If you wish to join any of tomorrow's breakout session, please register for them. Tomorrow, our workshop will have a maximum of only 30 participants. So please make sure you register for it because the lines do get long and we do hope that you'll be able to enjoy it. In the meantime, this is Dr. Ines Ponce de Leon from the Ateneo de Manila University, inviting all of you once again to stay in the conference, to listen, to learn more as we tackle ecological education and culture, looking back, looking forward. On behalf of AUN EEC, thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Thank you.
Thank you po.